And so there he is, Sammy. Aaron Rodgers flapping his gums, having a delightful conversation. It's perhaps, maybe it's because Big Cat's there that it comes up a little bit. But Aaron Rodgers reminds me of a bully who has moved away. And you're like, oh, great, he's out of our lives. Like this person who's been tormenting us for years is now, his parents moved away or whatever. And yet you find out he's still talking about it. Like all this time has passed and he's still sitting there running his mouth. And especially after he got his comeuppance with being tackled by the MetLife turf, you thought again, like this kind of stuff would humble him. Perhaps it would change Aaron Rodgers' tone. Perhaps he would be a little bit more magnanimous. But no, he's still being the same person he always was. And it's fine. And again, like I always take a little bit of issue with this whole thing about like the whole I own you thing, because Aaron Rodgers doesn't, like, he pretends he knows history. But the whole reason the Packers exist is because George Halas allowed it. And I don't want to go into the history of it right now. And I know there's people who'll be watching who are old enough to be like, yeah, that's exactly the truth. And so it's always a little bit like, read a book once in a while. That's my own thing, but whatever. He's still out there flapping his gums. Listen, we don't care about you anymore. It's on to Caleb Williams and everything. I'm glad that we're still top of mind for you. I'm sure Jets fans appreciate the fact that you're still talking about the Bears when you're skipping out on minicamp and doing all that stuff, but whatever. And don't worry, Sammy, I'm going to retweet this, but let's go ahead and start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
It's Hester trying to work it back to the middle. Gets past the first wave, and here he goes. It's Hester inside the 30. Hester's going to take it all the way for a touchdown. And no flag, 92 yards.
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
Hey everybody, it's Wednesday night. You know what that means? It is time for Take It to the Rank. Huge show for you tonight because we're going to have one of our favorites on joining us here this evening. And we'll get to him in just a little bit, but just want to let everybody know that the Bears game comes up here on August 1st. We will be coming on after that game to talk about what has happened. And next week, I will be joining our Titans version of the Sick Podcast. Those guys, if you're a Titans fan or if you just like football, those guys are amazing. So again, I would implore you to go check that out. So we'll be doing a double dip next week, getting a lot of good stuff going as the Bears take the field and we get to see a glimpse of Caleb Williams. I'm expecting him to play a little bit in the Hall of Fame game. We'll get to that in a second, because right now I want to bring out, as I said, one of our favorite people. He is a person who has worked so hard to get everything that he has done. He is still the same guy at heart, though. The same mentality and everything like that. And one thing that I really love about him, and he had a big tweet today that he was talking about this, about the grind and constantly trying to get better, trying to improve, but yet at the same time, realizing that everything that we do is a gift. So let's bring him out right now. You know him from CHGO. It is Greg Braggs who's joining us here today. And I'm so happy to see you. I don't think we've talked on air since everything went down in Milwaukee. How's everything going? And kind of I don't know what you've put out there, and I don't know how much people know, but like, how are you feeling? How are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about it on our show and on social media. Everybody knows I got a big mouth. So we were at the Brewers game and there was an escalator malfunction. I think malfunction would probably be putting it a little mildly, but essentially it sent us all toppling down on top of each other. And a few people got banged up pretty bad. I didn't really get, as bad as others. And so, like I said, in the moment, I was kind of grateful that my family wasn't there and that I didn't get hurt worse. But, we're hobbled up a little bit. I've been hobbling around, I was at the Windy City Smokeout last week with my wife and daughter and, crutching around a little bit. And if you see me at training camp here coming up this weekend, you'll probably see me crutching around there as well. So just trying to get by until we start doing what we got to do to get the knee fixed here in a few weeks. So It's day by day, but we'll make it. And yeah, like to your point about, I was doing some soul searching here over the summer, Adam, and this is my first full year not laying brick. So, I'm locked in, I know, just from our conversations we've had off camera. And so I think it's always healthy to kind of have a reset and remember why we all got into this, and obviously the route I took to get into this was a unique angle coming from Brick Lane to this. But you kind of need those daily, weekly, monthly, daily reminders, and humble yourself a little bit, because I think we all kind of have a competitiveness, just like the football teams we all watch. And I certainly do. So just trying to take a step back, going to camp on Friday, pads come on Friday for the Bears, and trying to reset and get to the right mindset that started me in this business and got me to where I'm at today.
I really appreciate it when you say stuff like that, because while our paths are not completely similar, starting off as a younger person who wanted to do this, I had some initial setbacks, and there was a 6-month period for a while where I was going to rent cars. I was actually working for Hertz Local, just kind of like in between things, because I interned for the NFL for a number of years. And so I'm like, is this really something? And sometimes it just takes a little reset to be like, you know what, this is what I want to do. Like, what am I doing? Like, it's no disrespect to anybody who rents cars. It was fun. It was enjoyable talking to people. You got to walk around and meet, tons of people every day. So there's nothing wrong with that. But there is a thing about chasing your passion and doing what you want to do. And as long as, you are afforded the opportunity, you want to take advantage of it. And similarly, I know that you always appreciate it. And I just, want to express that too. Whenever I see people out and about, I was in Pittsburgh a couple of weeks ago doing the Cam Hayward Celebrity Classic, signing autograph. Like, I sat out there, I'm not trying to blow myself up or anything, but I'm signing autograph. And I felt bad, cause I'm like, I would always look at the parents. I'm like, do these kids know I don't play for the Steelers? Is it cool?
Right.
They don't care. They literally don't care. Somebody's paying attention to them. And I'm like, okay, that's fine with me.
That's what happened to me. I was at camp last year and somebody asked me for an autograph, and I was like, why? I'm a complete idiot. What are you doing here? But like you said, that's always a humbling moment, right? Because we know everybody that tunes into this show and we see out, at camp or at games or at tailgates, and we're all in this together, whether you're in the media, you're doing a podcast, or you're a fan, watching these shows or in the stands. Like, we're all in this together for the same reason. And that's because sports. We love the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, 100%. And I gotta tell you, I was thinking about this on the drive home today, and because I know our producers love to do the show in the green room, I'm doing it right here for everybody here, because I want to put this out on the record. It's fun going to the Cam Hayward thing. I love it. And I love meeting the fans, but I have no real connection to Pittsburgh other than I'm friends with Britt Baker. Justin Fields was supposed to play and couldn't make it. And that's it. And Jaquan Brisker didn't play this year either. So I'm like, okay, I'm really out here on an island with no support. I want Chicago to do something. I don't know if there's a player who does this. I don't know. I figure with CHGO and the Sick Podcast, we could probably get something together in the summer, maybe before Fan Fest next year, to have a softball game, to get people out, shake hands, kiss babies, do all that stuff, and get everybody ready to go.
Dude, I'm totally down. That sounds great. I know our guy Cole is a big Cubs fan. Maybe we can force him out there. It'll be fun. He was at Wrigley today throwing out the first pitch, and he was rocking his CHGO shirt. So shout out to our guy Cole Komet.
Yeah, very nice. I was thinking between him and Tyler Scott, we should be able to get something together with some people going, and that would be a lot of fun. But enough about that. Now that we've caught up with everybody, I also noticed something that you said too about the excitement and just putting yourself out there as a fan, and just the willingness to be enthusiastic about what's going on. Like, I know the history of the Bears. Like, you don't have to tell me. Like, I'll go on not Total Access, that's been canceled, but Insiders, whatever it's called now. They got to throw the graphic. Like, they've never had a quarterback. I'm like, and I always have to start okay, Jim McMahon was pretty damn good. Cutler was good, but whatever. I know the history of the Bears, but I feel like we really need to, and I don't need to tell you, but I think people need to embrace the enthusiasm. This is a great time to be a Bears fan. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think this is probably the first time ever that we're like, it's weird because this is arguably, and again, we say this with every quarterback. We said it with Jay Cutler. We said it with Mitch Trubisky. We said it with Justin Fields. But this does legitimately feel like the most justified hype, where the other times, now looking back, hindsight being 2020, that we were kind of conjuring up hopes and dreams and equating that to things that we thought were more justified. This, I think the difference shows is that the national audience is kind of on board with what the Bears fans are saying. Typically, it's Bears fans shouting at the national audience, no, you don't understand, and you're going to find out. But now it seems like everybody's kind of seeing the vision together and agreeing that there's something here. And so, but the funny thing is for Bears fans is even though we've entered this moment where the offense on paper is like, wow, they're loaded, and Caleb Williams looks legit, but Bears fans are sitting there like, man, we've been burned before. And like this time of all the times, there's a little bit of guardedness with, a segment of fans because hey, I got to see it to believe it, show me. Cause I've been fooled before. I won't be fooled again. And I totally understand that sentiment. I'm the type of guy that always is going to go into training camp every year and see the best in the majority of the players that are there. When the Bears signed Mike Glennon, was I hyping Mike Glennon up at camp? No. But the majority of the players, especially rookies that come in, whether I agreed with the draft pick or not in the moment, once we get to camp, it's like I can envision their pathway to their most potential and success with the team. And until that moment comes where you start to see the light that that's not going to happen, I'm going to be optimistic about the outlook of younger players. And so with Caleb Williams, obviously there's the hype is exponential. I mean, I was talking about it last night with Corey Wooten, and to me, it really stood out at Jeff Jones. Like there's everybody's kind of seeming to gush over Caleb, the people that have seen him now in practice, because there were fans there yesterday. And, Hoag's excited, Carm, Nick, my guys at CHGO Bears, they all see that he looks the part. And you're seeing this across the board. Dan Wiederer, who's always, kind of very cynical in his approach and his analysis. He's even saying, dude, this guy's got it. And that starts to get Bears fans' ears up. The one quote that I saw that really had my attention was yesterday, Jeff Joniak and Tom Thayer, the guys that do the radio call for the Chicago Bears, two of the best in the business. Jeff Joniak's coming up on being
Joniak's a friend of the show.
And a legend, and a complete legend, and somebody that's coming up on being the longest tenured play-by-play guy in Chicago sports history. So he's seen it all here in Chicago. And what he said yesterday after he got off the practice field was, you've got to witness it for yourself. The pocket presence, he's got it. The spatial awareness, the climb in the pocket, eyes downfield, always looking for receivers. His head is like a pivot, just looking around, scanning, patiently finding his time. That to me is something you can't teach. And then Tom Thayer added on, two things you have to play quarterback to play quarterback in the NFL is arm talent and eye talent. And he's got both. And I'm following these two guys as long as I have. They've always told it like it is. Tom Thayer is extremely critical of the team.
Oh God, all the time. Right. Yeah. 100%.
He's not afraid. He's not afraid to pick bones with this team. So when I see those guys saying stuff like that, that really got my ears up. Like, man, I'm excited to get there Friday and see this for myself.
Yeah. It feels like ever since this draft process started, and I would even go back to December, there's been so much misinformation about Caleb Williams that started off with the national media. And I feel there's parallels to Caleb Williams and other things in the news cycle where people will attack a person for reasons that actually don't matter or don't make sense or just are completely untrue. And everything about Caleb Williams that people were saying, I remember guys coming out and saying like, well, he's told people he doesn't want to go to Chicago. That was never said. That he didn't want to do this or didn't want to do that. We saw that once the pro day started and our upper brass was there, of course, with Poles and Eberflus and everybody, the way they were acting around each other. Keenan Allen, the newly acquired Keenan Allen being there, I felt like that was the final, like, we should be done with this. And then people still want to go out there and make comments that he's soft or he's this or he's that. and I said this a while ago, is that, there were people who did not like Jim McMahon's approach to the NFL. Like, this guy's wearing sunglasses at a meeting. He's got a headband on. Like, that was salacious back in the 80s. And it didn't seem to matter. They went on to win a Super Bowl. I think Caleb has got a lot of that. And as we're starting to see him play on the field, it's not us trying to talk ourselves into it, because I think that there's a huge difference. And I think this was a big thing too. And I know Trubisky was second overall, but Trubisky was second overall in a draft of like, which quarterback's going first, possibly.
Right.
It wasn't a unanimous number one. If this guy had come out the previous year, he would have been number one. I think that makes a huge difference too. In the
100%.
kind of guy that we got, and even Justin Fields, who was great and I love, there is a difference between Caleb Williams coming in and all those other guys.
Yep. No question about it. I think everyone knew when the moment the Bears took Mitch Trubisky, that it was a reach. Now, what we didn't realize was that it was Patrick Mahomes that every team should have been looking at, because I think most Bears fans were mad the Bears didn't draft Deshaun Watson, which was the more obvious selection.
As a player on the field, yes.
Right. But this is a totally different stratosphere. And that's what I think some Bears fans didn't understand heading into the offseason. And this was the thing I tried to caution Bears fans about, like, as the season ended and they clinched the number one pick, and the improvement for the offense in Justin wasn't, to me, enough to meet a threshold that they were going to move off of an opportunity to draft a guy like Caleb Williams, because he is in that echelon of Trevor Lawrence and Cam Newton and Baker Mayfield and, all the different guys that have gone number one, Joe Burrow. Whether he lives up to the expectation is still yet to be determined. But in terms of who he is as a college prospect, former Heisman Trophy winner, guy that has a legitimate resume and a consensus number one pick type guy, it was always going to happen. And you're right, to the way the media portrayed him, even some fans trying to like pick apart character to make their case for one way or the other. DeMarcus Walker, who's one of the biggest, talkers on the team, a guy that will be the loudest guy at camp when the pads come on Friday. He was even saying, I don't like how the media made him. Not you guys, but I'm talking about the LA guys, just the mainstream LA media monster. And you're out there in LA, so I guess you.
Whoa. Wait.
No, me. No, but you got to hold it down out there, because he's taking exception to LA. But overall, Cole Kmet came out.
I mean, it's immaterial, but listen, ESPN LA is the home of USC. There was no way they were ever talking down Caleb. Maybe one of the other stations out here was.
Well, I think DeMarcus. Well, and I think DeMarcus probably was like, "Hey, I didn't like how the media portrayed him. Not you guys, you know what I mean? Like, trying to soften the blow as he's throwing haymakers. But overall, he wasn't wrong. Right. When Caleb was crying in his parents' arms after a game, that's something that's unique. You don't see that often. And a lot of people, fans, media, and everything in between, made fun of him for that in the moment. I'm a very emotional guy. If you hang out with me for a period of time, there is a 90% chance at some point you're going to see me crying about something, because I'm the same way. I that's just how my emotions spill out of me. So I had no issue with that with Caleb, and so, we had Cole Kmet on our show, during the offseason, and he said when they went to that dinner, that he was surprised and even felt bad about some of the preconceived notions he had about Caleb, because once he got to meet him in person, he saw that, this guy's about football, and all those things weren't true. And the thing that's really stood out to me from the moment we've drafted him through OTAs, mini camps, and all the way here to training camp is I've seen him operate. I've seen him at Wrigley Field. I've seen him at US Cellular, which I still call Comiskey. I've seen him around town here doing some different things. He did the thing for his Caleb Cares Foundation. But he's done all of that being as under the radar as a number one pick in Chicago, I think, has ever been. Yeah. I typically we are already throwing a parade the first day we bring in a first round pick, and he's been relatively under the radar. You don't see him on interviews with Colin Cowherd, a week leading up, Jalen Johnson did the interview tour here right before training camp with all the big outlets. Caleb, you didn't see that with him. And if he wanted to, he'd be justified in doing so. So I think you're seeing a clear attempt for Caleb to try to keep everything low key. When I go to Wrigley Field, I'm going to let somebody else throw out the first pitch. I go to Comiskey, Rome's going to throw out the first pitch. I'm not going to put myself in front of everybody because I already got enough, smoke coming around me. Let's give some of these guys a little juice too. That to me has really stood out about Caleb here this offseason.
And I know that camp's just been going on for a couple of days, but he's actually been really impressive on the field too. I mean, nobody's going to be more scrutinized in camp, and he's going up against a pretty good defense, a defensive-minded head coach. I feel like he's been weathering the storm pretty well, and the progress that we've seen already. I mean, again, not to get too excited, and today's the first day of camp for a lot of teams, so they're starting to jump into this as well. Obviously, no pads or anything, and it's easy to look, but I think so far he's actually sort of exceeded my expectations. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, going off of what I'm hearing from the reporting, my first day at camp to see this in person myself will be Friday. But from the clips that the Bears are putting out, and then you combine that with the reporting from the people that are there, it does feel like you're going to immediately see that this guy has a feel for the game and a touch for the game. Like when people say, well, what does that mean, feel? Well, like Joniak said, spatial awareness in the pocket. You're hearing, like last year, one of my biggest criticisms at training camp was like everything was quick game. Everything was short and underneath. And I was like, yeah, that's great. But where's the downfield passing? I've gone to training camps for 20, 25 years, and I'd never seen the lack of deep ball threat at a camp. I mean, when you're at camp, you have 2 hours of practice, you have a ton of reps, you're throwing the ball downfield. There'll be 2 or 3 deep balls a day at a training camp. And last year, you really weren't seeing that. There was probably 1 or 2 of what I would consider something that's really stretching the field horizontally. And other than that, everything was underneath. And the excuse and the rationalization we used as Bears fans was like, well, that's what they want Justin to work on. That's what he needs to do better at because he's good at the deep ball. So that means we're going to work on short game. Well, when the season came around, you saw stretching the field was an issue for the Bears and everything was underneath. Well, I do think with the difference with Caleb is, so far, it sounds like a lot of the stuff is underneath, but the difference I think we're going to learn, and we had to go through this tough learning process with Justin, is how quick it comes out with Caleb. The arm angles, the flick of the wrist, the feel for the game. That's just a touch faster, and in a game of inches, that couple seconds that are faster, that arm motion that's quicker, getting the ball out of your hands, those are paramount in a play working and a play not working. And then, like I said, in these video clips the Bears are putting out, what you saw of Caleb Williams at USC, you're seeing in these clips now at training camp. And that's exciting because he's showing his ability to climb the pocket, fight to stay in the pocket, drop his shoulder at times. At one time, he's avoiding Montez Sweat, 2 hands on the football, keeping it away from Montez, and then, using his eyes and his shoulders to manipulate Tremaine Edmonds to go right, and then opening up this wide open window for DJ Moore right down the middle. That's what feel of the game is, and something we're not really that used to with quarterbacks in Chicago. Everything is like grinding your teeth to get first downs. And we appreciate the heart, hustle, and muscle that our previous quarterbacks have put in. But I think it's going to be a different level with Caleb Williams. But at the end of the day, you can do it at camp, and that's exciting to see. But then we'll know for sure when the bullets start flying.
And speaking of which, the Bears have said he was going to get between 40 to 50 game reps in the preseason. And I know a lot of people were kind of like, whoa, that's not a lot. But you have to remember, there's just 3 preseason games now as opposed to 4. Now the Bears have an extra one because of the Hall of Fame game. So it'll be interesting to see how many of those reps come in that contest. Do you think that's a good number for him? Or do you want to see him a little bit more in preseason games?
I made the statement, whatever Mahomes' number is in the preseason, you better be more than that.
Yeah.
Because for so many years with Matt Nagy, this was a huge issue that I had when I was doing shows with Draft Dr. Phil and Shane Marceau. We blasted Nagy that second
Yes.
year after they had the successful season.
Atrocious.
They go into the next preseason, all we need to do is fix the kicker, and then they did not make any emphasis on preseason snaps, and we're sitting there going, hey, red alert. I don't care that this is the 100-year anniversary. You got the Packers week 1. You got to be ready to play. And they weren't. And you can attribute some of that to the lack of reps in preseason, and also the fact that at the end of the day, Mitch Trubisky was just too flawed of a quarterback. But that's why the preparation is so key. So if it's good enough for Tom Brady to play in the preseason as much as he did throughout his illustrious career, if it's good enough for guys like Russell Wilson or Patrick Mahomes and all the best quarterbacks, I see them getting snaps in preseason. So you better be having more than them. Are they going to wait and the Hall of Fame game will be the starter run? Maybe they just have them out there for that first series, hand it off 3 times. That's it, just to get into the operation of things. But they do have an extra preseason game. So now they're back to 4 for this year. Last year it was only 3. So are you going to have it where you have them play weeks 1, 2, and 3 of the preseason, and then the starters sit week 4? Personally, they're getting reps in every week, because even if you go all the way to the end, you have like 2.5 weeks before you play the Tennessee Titans week 1. And so I think that if it were me, I would have them come out for at least a series at the Hall of Fame game next Thursday. And if you want to be very cautious about it and just get them into their pregame routine, kickoff routine, come out there, do one series where you work on getting the play in, calling it in the huddle, get everybody lined up. And if you just want to hand it off 3 times, so be it. I'd throw it once. That's just me. But then you start incrementally adding to that. So you 1 series the first game, a quarter the second game, 2 quarters the third game, and then in the 4th game, you play into the second half. That's how they used to do it.
Right.
That was the norm for years. And now all of a sudden we've gotten to this where we're going to, soft play everything because we're afraid of injuries. The Bears went into week 1 last year injured, even though they tried to protect the team. Kyler Gordon wasn't available week 1. They had injuries that they had to deal with, regardless of the fact that they were trying to be safe with it. So I'm a little different in throwing, caution to the wind. I'm saying, hey, let's get these guys ready to play. So it'll be interesting to see how Matt Eberflus approaches it, but I am a big proponent of getting as many snaps as you possibly can. You hear Cole Kmet talking about, we got to get this thing going right away. You hear these guys talking about gelling quickly, because I think everybody understands that they have an opportunity to be competitive. Well, if you want to do that, and you got a very winnable game week 1, you got to do what you got to do to get there and be ready for that moment.
Yeah, and I know too, and whether this is fair or not, but Eberflus is a little bit on the hot seat. I mean, I'm already seeing some stuff from the national media with people like, who's the first coach fired? And it's usually the 3 New York guys and Eberflus. You're like, why is he being thrown under the bus? But I'm going, I guess that's the big knock right now with everybody. Is like, well, we don't know what we have in Eberflus, or like, he's the question mark. He's holding him back. And sometimes, and I don't remember if I said this on the NFL show last week or not, but I at least said it in one of the interviews. I'm like, too many people have confused the fact that the Bears had the number 1 pick, but it wasn't their own. Like, that wasn't the Bears pick. And I think, I think it's hard for people to kind of put it in their mind of like, this was a 7-win team. This was a team that had 3 wins, then went to 7. And they blew 3 games, and we talk about this all the time, 3 games with a 90% chance of winning in the 4th quarter, and we blew it. And like, it's fair to question that, but it's like, it was still a young team trying to win. And, and it's so tough talking about this because I don't want to make it seem anti-Justin Fields, but it's like, the quarterback could have played a little bit better in those losses. I'm not saying it was all his fault or anything like that, but at the same time, like, listen, like that, but it's a 7-win team. Like even Sauce Gardner came out during the draft. He had a tweet, and he's hilarious on Twitter, by the way. I love Sauce Gardner. And so he came out and said, how are the Bears picking first? That's a good team. And they have the first overall pick in the draft. Like,
Right.
I don't get it. But I think people are confusing it because, like, when we put out our win predictions, you know, obviously we're meatballs and we were like double-digit wins. And I think I had 12 and you had 11. You're like, this is a 5-win team. I'm like, I don't get how you think that this is a 5-win team. You can be like, the Bears win 7, 8, 9. They kind of float along again. Fine. I don't agree, but but when you're like, they're going to win 3 games, like, no, they got way better. It feels like people don't understand, like, this is a pretty good team.
Yeah, no, 100%. And we had Aaron Schatz on CHGO Bears, and he was really interesting, like analytical guy. So like way over my head typically, but he did it. He did such a great job of explaining the numbers to me like I was 5. So it helped me kind of, you know, get on his level. But he's actually the inventor of DVOA. And now he's in fantasy football. So he does a little bit of that stuff. And I don't know how familiar you are with his work, but
I'm familiar. Yeah.
He's great.
Too.
Yeah, he's great. Like in his like we talked a lot of stuff outside of fantasy and just talked about like winning odds percentages and the thing that's interesting is he said that the Bears had like what they termed as a 16% chance of making the playoffs. And that seemed low to a lot of Bears fans, but for him, his reasoning was the fact that you can't depend on a rookie quarterback. But as to your point, this is such a unique situation that no number 1 pick quarterback has walked into in the history of football. It's not really debatable. It's not blowing smoke because we're Bears fans. It is the proof is on the paper. DJ Moore and Keenan Allen are established players and stars in this league. Cole Kmet has statistically been one of the better tight ends the last 2 years in an offense that had struggle moving the football at times. And so then you add in the fact you got DeAndre Swift and a run game that has been successful here, you know, the last few years under Chris Morgan, who's now the run game coordinator here in Chicago. They kept him over from last year. And you can see the opportunity of success that they have. And then just the potential of Caleb Williams to pick it up quickly. Do we think he's going to have a better year than CJ Stroud? I don't think anybody's, going to push their chips in and bet $500 on that being the case. But I think there's enough proof the last few years when you look at Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence and guys coming into the league and making it. It's Kyler Murray. These guys came in right away and were able to pick it up fairly quickly. And there's no reason to think that Caleb Williams can't at least be a touch better at the quarterback position for the Bears this year than compared to last year, and the offense being a little bit better than it was last year for this year.
I don't know if you caught this week ago, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, is I put out a tweet about Justin Herbert. And I'm like, hey, everybody seems to forget that Justin Herbert had 4,000 passing yards and 20 some odd touchdowns in 15 games during his rookie season, which sparked a huge debate. It got a lot of run and everything like that. There were very few people who understood that was a pro Caleb Williams tweet, because the conversation got to be about Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh and that, which is great. Right. Like, it's great for my Twitter stats. But at the same time, like, a couple of Bears fans did pick up on, like, this is a Caleb Williams tweet. Like, this is because that's the thing, is because I'll listen to guys like Dan Orlovsky or anybody like that who's like, hey, like, what CJ Stroud did never happened in the NFL. I'm like, it happened like 4 times in the previous 4. Like, it happens all the time. Like, this game is much different than it used to be. Like, these guys come into NFL situations pro ready. You didn't have that a lot in college football. A lot of these old school college football coaches, and even for the longest time, it took Nick Saban a while to get into this before he finally brought in Lane Kiffin to modernize his offense. About like, no, everybody runs a pro style offense. There's high school kids. Like, I'm sitting out here. There's a group of kids that do their Friday night light practice in basically our green belt here. Like, they're sitting there chewing up my green belt where I've been chipping golf balls all the time. We're like, now your cleat marks are everywhere. Now I'm getting kicked out. But then that's the thing. But everybody is running pro style off. It's nothing new. It's not like 100%. Calvin Johnson going from the wing tee in college to playing NFL football. Like, these guys know what they're doing. And all you got to do is get the terminology and all that stuff down. And there's really, like, they're ready. Like, again, it just seems ridiculous that, like, this is what they're hanging their hats on.
Well, and I think the thing that people are like, you're seeing some of these talk shows, some of the bigger shows, on bigger networks saying like, well, we don't know if he's going to be Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. Everybody at this time last year, said Bryce Young was the better of the two. There wasn't as many people suggesting that CJ Stroud was definitely going to be better. And then hindsight being 2020 ends up being that, CJ is better than Bryce. So this is our basis on why we're not going to go all in on Caleb just yet. But the difference is Bryce Young, who I'm not ready to write off. I get everybody's down on him. He was on the worst football team in Chicago, or the worst football team in the NFL. And the reason Chicago got the number one pick, like you said. And so CJ Stroud is on a team and with an offensive coordinator that's much more ready for giving him some success early on. Well, you can make the argument that the Bears and what they have around him with weapons, with the new offensive coordinator, and with the defense backing them and giving them good opportunity for field position and having the ball a few more times, that they're in a better situation that the Texans were walking into week 1 last year. So, that's the fan math that we're all trying to figure out right now. And at the end of the day, I mean, it doesn't equate, we can speculate and say, try to draw these comparisons and say, well, the Bears won 7 games. They should have won 9. And that equals that we're going to be better this year because of X, Y, and Z. And then do the same thing with, well, the Texans were this good and our weapons are better than theirs. And so this equals the Bears will be just as good, if not a touch better. That all makes sense, but it's not a transitive thing, and so it doesn't guarantee anything, but it also gives us somewhat of a baseline of where this feels a little more legitimate, like we said. So, right. Doesn't guarantee it. Excited to find out, but I do think that we have a little more legs to stand on than we had in years past with some of our hopes and dreams heading into week 1.
Yeah, and honestly, I was on record on the NFL Network before the draft last year. There was a video of me saying that CJ Stroud was going to be the better quarterback. And what's funny is the kids on the internet never picked that up. All those guys who are always like, do the opposite of what rank says, and they pull up the 3-13 prediction of the 49ers from 2018. You can't find that video. It's on my TikTok. Come watch it with me. The thing of it is, though, and I will say this as somebody who really loves CJ Stroud, if he would have been on Carolina's team, he would not have won Rookie of the Year. We would not be lauding him the way that we are. And Bryce Young, Bryce Young is very much in his Justin Fields era of like not being given a real opportunity to go out there. And that's on Carolina as well. They could have traded Brian Burns instead of DJ Moore. What an idiotic franchise that is. You are the dumbest franchise in the world for doing that. Like the Bears gave you, even they know, like Ryan Poles is doing you a solid and being like, just give us Brian Burns. Like, no, we'll give you DJ Moore. I wish I could have seen Ryan Poles' face just be like, yeah, okay. Like, please send him. Yep. We're happy to take DJ Moore of all people.
Between dealing with the Panthers and then seeing some of this stuff in the Hard Knocks with the Giants conversations with the Bears, where they were like, "Oh, we'll let the Bears trade up to 6 because they're going to take a left tackle and we'll take Rome." I was like, what's with all these teams? Right. What's with all these teams wanting to do deals with us and not realize like, how are we getting the better end of things all of a sudden all the time? It's weird. It's a weird world to live in, the way things are working out. And to your point about, there was people around the league, including yourself, that were predicting CJ Stroud to be better. Scottish Bear in the chat even brings it up. The staff on Carolina had a direct disagreement with the owner. The owner wanted Bryce Young.
Yeah, that's true.
There were coaches on that staff that were predicting CJ Stroud was better. Josh McCown, you can watch a tape breakdown of him before he was drafted, him gushing over Josh McCown. So, like, there were people that saw it coming. Obviously, the Panthers weren't one of them, and all of that led to
David
the Bears.
Tepper. David Tepper wasn't one of them. That's what it comes down to. By the way, I got to slow my roll going after an owner, but whatever. By the way, Sammy, if there are any questions or anything like that, I don't mean to leave people out of this conversation. We're just having a good time talking ball. Haven't seen Braggs in a while. I will say I get jealous every time I see you going to Wrigley on a Friday afternoon. I'm like, oh my God. And by the way, speaking of bad owners, Artie Moreno cost me because of him, because he didn't re-sign Ohtani. I checked out a little bit at the beginning of the season because otherwise my dream is to go to a Friday day game, Wrigley. The Angels were there. The Angels were playing. I'm like, I didn't even realize it till I'm like, oh, geez. And I think I texted you and I said, hey, Angel fans or USC fans, we all like Caleb Williams. As a matter of fact, like coming around where we watch the Bears games on Sundays out here in Southern California at Rip Beer Company in Southern California, a lot of people have come up to me and they said, hey, you know what? We kind of put up with you guys watching the Bears game here. Cause like they usually roll in around noon when the Bears game's finishing up here on the West. And they're like, we're coming in early now to come watch Caleb. Cause you know, a lot of people are not still affiliated with an NFL team. They just like USC. And now that Caleb is the quarterback of the Bears, we're going to get a big surge in Southern California fans of just wanting to see Caleb Williams, which is not a thing of like, this is why we need to.
Well, I'm hoping one of those fans is Snoop Dogg. Like I
would hope so.
I need Snoop Dogg on a Chicago Bears sideline at some point this season. I know he's a big Caleb Williams fan and they've had some interactions. So if we could get Snoop Dogg into Bears Nation, that will really fulfill my childhood, my entire childhood, which is
I think we can make that happen. I know some people who know some people. By the way, Sammy said that we do have a couple of questions. Let's fly up a couple of questions, Sammy. We're having a good time. How do you guys see the touches in the backfield going down? Just want to know how high I pick Swift in my draft soon. LOL. Listen, thankfully you brought this up because if you go to NFL.com/rank right now, I am starting to release my fantasy football tiers. And we break out the players. It's a rankings page, but it also breaks them up into tiers. You got tier 1, tier 2. DeAndre Swift, to me, if I have this correctly, I gotta just pull it up. I got it on my computer right here. I will tell you where I have him. Don't tell anybody. And I hope the wide receivers will come out tomorrow. I'm actually finishing the tight ends right now. Okay, so I got the running back tiers right now. Sorry, Braggs. You got to deal with the fantasy question right now.
Oh, it's good. It's good.
So I have him at the top of tier 4, which would be at 19, ahead of Rachaad White and Raheem Mostert and players like that. For whatever reason, I let the people bully me into putting Josh Jacobs up there. Now James Coe was on the show last week, 2 weeks ago. It was 2 weeks ago. We had James Coe on. He's like, I don't get the Josh Jacobs hype. And I'm like, I don't either. Matt LaFleur, you go back and watch that show. We bashed Matt LaFleur a lot. You would have loved it. I truly believe that DeAndre Swift is going to end up being the number 1 running back in this offense for the reason being the Bears wasted no time to go out there and get it. You were talking about Hard Knocks a moment ago. Like the Giants were like, oh, the Bears like just immediately went after DeAndre Swift. Didn't go after maybe they did or didn't go after Saquon. It doesn't matter. Swift was who they identified. And I truly believe that he's an elite level talent that had Philadelphia not given 15 rushing touchdowns to Jalen Hurts, DeAndre would have scored so many touchdowns. We'd be having a different conversation.
Right.
I truly believe he gets those opportunities with the Bears. And as much as I like Khalil Herbert, and I think Roshan Johnson's fine, I think it's going to be DeAndre Swift's backfield.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all depends on how quickly the passing game can get acclimated. And it's not just with the receivers and Caleb, it's the offensive line. And if that offensive line can hold up where they don't have to bring additional protection in the backfield, whether that be with a tight end or a running back, that's where my questions will start to come into play, because I think the logical thing for a rookie quarterback would be to say, hey, let's run the football early on. Let's establish the run. And so then, that would, okay, DeAndre Swift can definitely do that in the outside zone scheme that the Bears run. And so I think he'd certainly get snaps. But if you're also taking into account a pass protection, element of this, and how well DeAndre Swift can hold up, I've heard different opinions on how good or bad DeAndre Swift is as a pass, in pass protection. I want to see it for myself personally, but I know last year that was a problem for the Bears. And so I think that's also going to play into how the snaps get divvied out, especially early on when they're trying to feel out what they want their identity to be in those first few weeks, while they try to figure out just how ready Caleb is for how much of the playbook.
No, I agree. Pass pro is a big indicator, and you don't want to be one-dimensional in your running. You want a running back, because you don't want to pin it on, you don't want one running back labeled as your pass pro guy, because when that guy comes on the field and the defense knows what's happening. So the first person that really establishes themselves in that area will end up getting a lot of the work. That's always a good note too, especially, and not just for the Bears, but for every team. When you look at a lot of the rookies and like young players in the NFL, like how much is Bucky Irving going to play for Tampa Bay or something like that? It's like, how good is he in pass protection? That usually is the biggest indicator. How about another question, Sammy? Definitely need to know who Braggs think is dominating at camp this season. Again, you're going to be there on Friday. You've heard a lot of reports about people. Who are you most excited to see?
Yeah, well, he's making a Chase Claypool joke there, because last year through those first 10 days of practice, I made the statement that he was dominating at camp. And then I think the very next day he got hurt. And then 3 weeks later, they shipped him out of town. So I completely jinxed him for any potential success. No. I'll take the blame on this. The word on Bills, the Bills beat is he's once again dominating the offseason for the Bills. So we'll see if, the story's different for him there in Buffalo. But I do this every year. So, it's going to be some kind of wide receiver every single year for 15 years. I find a way to get excited about some receiver. Normally, it is a receiver that is just on the fringe of making the roster. But normally we don't have a wide receiver room as loaded as we do now, where these spots are already taken for the most part. And so I don't know if I'll have the opportunity to even dream about a Tanner Gentry type who, this is what I would do to myself every year. And, they brought in, Carter for return specialist. I think there's a very good chance he makes a roster. Obviously, your first 4 spots are locked in with Tyler Scott, Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, and DJ Moore. Tyler Scott's already making a few plays that they've put video out. So excited for him in that role. And so, who makes it beyond that? But for me, going to camp, especially nowadays where they don't hit as much, so the physicality isn't what it used to be, that it was 10 or 15 years ago in the trenches or the run game. The wide receiver versus DB battles are that's the show. When you go to camp, that's the main event. It's even better than the 7-on-7s and the 11-on-11s, because you watch these receivers and DBs, going at each other. And this year, this is a heavyweight bout, with DJ Moore versus Jalen Johnson and Keenan Allen versus Tyreek Stevenson and Rome Odunze versus Kyler Gordon, and mixing and matching those matchups up. So, who's going to be dominating? Oh man, I'm sure I'm just gonna freak out as soon as I see Rome Odunze. I have no doubt that is somebody. I was excited for the idea of him to be a Bear. Yeah. In the offseason when we got him, when he fell to the Bears at 9, there's an epic video of me at our draft party completely losing my mind. He was my favorite guy that we interviewed at the combine with his personality. He's got the size. He's got the look. Keenan Allen. I've compared him to Keenan Allen, all the way dating back to last year while he was still playing at Washington. Now they're on the same team, and Keenan Allen is comparing him, Rome Odunze, as a better version of himself coming out of college. So I have a funny suspicion that I'm going to completely freak out the first day I lay my eyes on Rome Odunze in a Bears uniform at camp.
You're going to mark out right there. I'm glad you had a different draft experience than I did when Rome Odunze was drafted, because I was hanging out with Tyler Scott. So I was like, no. It was cool. It was fine. It was fine.
It's already all working itself out, right?
We're all good. We're all good. No. We want a robust room, like where it was, was it Justin's second season where like Darnell was number one, and then it was like Equanimous St. Brown,
Pettis.
and Dante Pettis. You're like, oh God.
Look how far we've come. We've come. And now Tyler's, you had Keenan Allen that had a Veterans Day off, right? DJ's going to get that Veterans Day off. Rome was out, for personal reasons, had a family member pass away. And so those different, things have given Tyler Scott some more reps and some more opportunities. And everybody's talking about the deep ball where he catches it and he falls to the ground. Obviously, Tyler in the video, you can see he knows I got to stay on my feet. You could see his frustration as he popped up. But at the end of the day, seeing that chemistry start to build with him and Caleb Williams, you're going to want somebody that is your slot guy that's going to stretch the field. Obviously Rome, Keenan, and DJ are going to do a lot of different things, underneath and things of that nature. And Tyler last year at camp, there was nobody at camp, even DJ Moore included, in my opinion, that created more separation for themselves than Tyler Scott. So that's what quarterbacks see. They see the separation and the window of opportunity to throw the football. Tyler is going to get that separation. And as long as he holds on to the football,
yes.
Even if he does one somersault and gets up and runs to the end zone, I'm fine with that. Just let's make sure we secure the football, and he knows that. And I guarantee Caleb and him are going to lock up for a few big plays in the season.
Yeah, you know what, and that's the thing too. It's like he knows, like that's it. You don't have to tell him, like, hey, you should, like he understands. Like it's going to be a little bit better securing the football. The biggest key. What about I've heard a lot of great things about Dexter too. I've heard that he looks like a monster. Like he just came back all shredded. Like when Eddie Guerrero back in the day first showed up, after when he became like the true Latino Heat, just a body transformation like no other. I heard Dexter's looking great.
Yeah, no, you're right. We had him on about a month ago, 3 weeks ago or so, while he was still training down in Florida. And, his workout routine, his diet, he's gotten leaner, which he's, saying that's going to help him get off the ball quicker. A guy of his size, that playing the 3 technique in this, defense, the way Corey Wooten explains it to me, it's not always easy when you're the bigger guy. We've had the Tommy Harrises and the Henry Meltons, Aaron Donald, those guys are lower center of gravity type players and bull rush their way through. Well, Javon's got to get up. It's for him to get that pad level lower is a lot harder for a guy like him, but he gets away with it because of the brute strength that he has and size and physicality. So the fact that he's as locked in, Eric Washington, our defensive coordinator, sitting there saying, his focus and mentality is something you don't always see with second-year players. You see that with the way his body looks. Compare that. So that shows you the work he's putting in. He had a quote that I really enjoyed where he said, I'm watching Montez sweat, and whatever Montez does, I'm going to do because he's doing things in this league that I want to do. And that's the right mentality to have. He shows up to report day and takes his testing with the defensive ends, so he's obviously understanding the opportunity he has in front of him. And so The biggest thing for me, because at the end of the day, until we see the pads on Friday, until we see them in the preseason or week 1 when the bullets start flying, to really know if he's ready to take that next step, is we're going off of what we're seeing, from his workout and what we're hearing. And when we had him on our show a month ago, it really stood out, his confidence. We had him on last year in November for a show we did at a bar right down the street from Comiskey. And he was so shy, really nice guy. But it was one of those moments where this guy is just it's Javon Dexter. He's a massive human being. And I'm 20 years older than him. But when you stand next to somebody like that, you feel like the kid, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like Calais Campbell's like that, where you're just like, good Lord.
Right.
It's just a massive human being.
Right. They're different we live in totally different worlds. But his shyness last year, it reminded me just how young he is. He just had a very kid-like, persona, just because he's so young and fresh to this whole thing. And it was one of those reminders that I'm getting older, and these players are still young kids. I know they're making a lot of money, but at the end of the day, when I was their age, I was still a kid at heart. I still am a kid at heart. So, but then when we had him on this season or 4 weeks ago, you could feel and hear that confidence of a guy that is much more comfortable in where he's at here in Chicago, much more comfortable in the confidence level of what he can do in this defense, and the maturation process, the maturity of having a full season as a professional, player here in the NFL. You could see and hear that with him. So I think all of that stuff is translating and moving in the right direction. But at the end of the day, once the bullets start flying, I mean, you're going to preface all of our hype here in the preseason with that. But I think the signs are pointing in the right direction. He didn't show up to camp out of shape.
That's great.
Not too many players do that anymore. That used to be a more common thing 10 years ago. Somebody wouldn't be allowed to practice for 3 days until they got their ass in gear. But nowadays, most players are working out 365 days a year. They don't miss a beat.
When you go out there, the Hard Knocks cameras will be there. You alluded to Hard Knocks a moment ago. Who do you think is going to be the biggest breakout star for Hard Knocks this season?
Well, certainly Roma Dunze. I brought him up earlier. I think he's got the perfect personality. He's going to have the rookie wide receiver, top 10 pick. I don't think that Caleb is going to be overly featured. They'll certainly have their fair share of Caleb content, but I don't think they'll need to overcook him, and they're going to look for other angles. Tory Taylor, obviously, with his unique story, coming from Australia and then going to Iowa. So I think those two guys.
Hey, there he is. There he is. Who's freezing? Is it me or is it you?
It could be me.
It could be me.
Well,
we've been having some power problems on here. Yeah. By the way, if I somehow fly out of this, it's because and I can't get my alarm clock to turn off. Oh wait, I got it. All right. Yeah, if there's some sort of alarm, if there's some sort of if I disappear, you got to close the show. But we're going to be wrapping up here in just a second, anyways. But
yeah, so I would say Tory Taylor, Roma Dunze for sure.
What about I think Tevin Jenkins is a good candidate.
Tevin for sure. Tevin for sure. I'm trying to come up with like a real unique guy, as somebody that's Ian Williams, right? The running back. I think he's got an interesting story, and they always want to find those roster bubble types. Yeah. And I think he has an opportunity to make some noise because of this whole kick return, how they're changing the way the kick return game is.
So with him, and with him and like Valus and D Carter, like that could be like a huge storyline of who's going to win that thing.
Yeah, and thank you, Scottish Bear. I said Ian Williams. I meant Ian Wheeler. And we had him on our show, and I really enjoyed his story as well. Tony Medlin, right?
Yeah.
The equipment guy for 50 years. Come on, we got to get some Tony Medlin content here, at camp. So, it's going to be a lot of fun. And and you may or may not see my beautiful smiling face on HBO.
Wait a minute. Have they interviewed you already?
No. But there was this meetup with fans at on the Riverwalk in Chicago, where they do like the architectural boat tour.
Of course.
And they had a meetup there, and I went and stopped by. I was going to be in the city for a show that afternoon, and they were doing it in the morning. So I made my way over there and was seeing if I could slide in, and the Hard Knocks people were very welcoming, and they basically just did some like crowd shots. They had like, a couple hundred Bears fans all dressed up in their gear. And so they did some different crowd shots that I think they're going to integrate potentially into the show in some capacity. So I'm excited to see if I made the cut, if my Oscar performance was worthy enough of making the cut. So we'll have to wait and see.
I can't wait to see it, and can't wait for you to get out there at Bears camp. So we're going to call it a day right now. I want to thank everybody who joined us here today. You will be out at camp. You will be out at camp on Friday. So we look forward to hearing some more reports, and then we'll get back together soon. We anticipate seeing you a lot more this upcoming season. So appreciate your time as always. Don't go anywhere, because I'm going to play us out right now. And that's all we got. So enjoy training camp. We're almost there, everybody. Football is back. So for Braggs, I'm Rank. That's all I got. Bear down, and Sammy, go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.